Chapter 1. Temporal Tides.
Dr. Emma Morgan tugged her windbreaker tighter as a gust of briny air whipped across the harbor. Blackwater Cove appeared suspended in time. Weathered fishing boats bobbed alongside antique storefronts that wouldn't have looked out of place a century ago. Only the occasional satellite dish or solar panel betrayed the true era. She inhaled deeply, tasting salt and possibilities on her tongue. After months of chasing elusive bioluminescent anomalies along the eastern seaboard, her research had led her to this remote Maine fishing village.
"Are you a scientist, lady?" a gruff voice asked.
Emma turned to find a weathered man approaching, his beard nearly as gray as the sky, threatening rain overhead. His heavy canvas jacket bore the insignia of the harbor master. "I'm Dr. Emma Morgan," she confirmed, extending her hand, "marine biologist."
"Sam Fletcher.
His handshake was firm but brief.
I have your boat slip all set up at the end of Pier 3. Your equipment arrived yesterday."
"Perfect, thank you." Sam squinted toward the eastern peninsula, where a lonely lighthouse stood silhouetted against the darkening sky.
"I understand you're interested in the waters around Black Point."
"That's right. I'm studying unusual bioluminescent patterns that—"
"Folks around here don't go out much past those shows," he interrupted. "There are strange waters out there, unpredictable currents."
Emma offered a polite smile. She'd encountered local superstitions before. "I appreciate the warning, but I've got excellent navigation equipment."
"I'm not talking about getting lost, Doc." Sam's weathered face remained impassive. "I'm just saying time acts funny out near the point, especially during certain tides."
Before she could question him further, Sam gestured toward a small white clapboard building.
"Your keys are at the office. The rental's got a good view of the water." He hesitated, then added grudgingly, "If you need anything, my number's on the fridge."
As Sam walked away, Emma pulled out her phone and frowned when she saw 3 missed calls from Diana, her best friend. She dialed back as she walked toward the harbor master's office. "Finally!" Diana's voice exploded through the speaker. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. How's Blackwater Cove?" Exactly what you'd expect from a tiny fishing village. Picturesque, provincial, and full of cryptic warnings about the local waters. Diana laughed. "So, the usual warm welcome for Dr. Morgan and her crazy light-chasing equipment?" "Something like that." Emma paused at the harbor's edge, watching gulls wheel overhead. "The readings we captured last month are still holding. Whatever's causing those light patterns, it's strongest here. And completely defies every known species of bioluminescent marine life," Diana added. "Your ex called the lab, by the way." Emma's stomach tightened. What did Martin want? "Something about papers you still need to sign. I told him you were unreachable for at least 2 weeks." Perfect. Maybe he'll finally understand that divorced means I don't jump when he calls anymore. Emma tried to keep the bitterness from her voice. 3 years of marriage to a fellow scientist had taught her that devotion to research was Martin's only consistent loyalty. "Are you okay, Liz? You could have sent me to handle this field research, especially after everything with the divorce." "I'm exactly where I need to be." Emma watched the lighthouse in the distance, its beam not yet lit against the afternoon sky. Besides, immersing myself in work is my therapy. These light patterns are unlike anything I've ever encountered. They only appear during specific tidal conditions, and they seem to defy the laws of physics. Just be careful. The weather reports for your area look threatening. "I'll be fine. I'll call tomorrow after I set up the equipment." Emma pocketed her phone and collected her keys. The rental turned out to be a converted boathouse perched at the harbor's edge. It was simple but perfect for her needs. By evening, she had transformed the main room into a functional laboratory, her specialized equipment monitoring water conditions and light wavelengths throughout the harbor. At the local diner, she was nursing a cup of coffee when a young waitress with a nameplate reading Jenny slid into the seat across from her. "You're staying in Old Man Patterson's boathouse, right? Are you here about the lights?" Her eyes were bright with interest. Emma smiled cautiously. "Have you seen them?" "Everyone has. They come with the changing moon." Jenny leaned forward. "My granddad lost 3 hours out there once. He said his watch just skipped ahead while he was fishing near the lighthouse." Lost time is a common psychological phenomenon when people are alone on the water, Emma offered. Jenny smirked. "That's what the last scientist said too, before she left town suddenly." She stood up. "The lighthouse is haunted, you know. It has been since that keeper's daughter was born there in the 1800s. They say time doesn't work right around it." Emma started to respond, but Jenny moved off before she had a chance. With a shrug, she took another sip of her coffee. After dinner, Emma checked her equipment readings. The lunar tide would peak at midnight, which was perfect conditions according to her previous data. Despite the harbor master's warning about an approaching storm, she decided to venture out. This might be her only chance before weather conditions deteriorated. As Emma guided her research vessel toward Black Point Lighthouse, the predicted storm gathered with unnatural speed. The swells grew, pitching the small craft as she collected water samples. Strange electrical charges seemed to dance across her instruments. Through the spray, the lighthouse stood sentinel. It was dark, as it had been for decades since automation. Yet for an instant, Emma could have sworn she saw a warm glow from within. The equipment suddenly triggered alarms and showed radiation levels impossible for natural phenomena. The water around her boat grew oddly still, then violent. Lightning struck the water nearby, blue and unnatural in its intensity. As the vessel lurched violently, Emma lost her footing on the wet deck. The last thing she saw before crashing into the frigid Atlantic was a swirling blue luminescence beneath the waves, like a door opening in the depth and pulling her downward into impossible light.
Chapter 2. Washed Ashore.
Consciousness returned with the taste of salt and sand. Emma coughed violently, expelling seawater from her lungs as she rolled onto her side on the rocky shore. Pain lanced through her head. Dawn light filtered through a heavy mist, illuminating scattered debris. Her equipment case, broken open with its sophisticated instruments, were strewn across the beach. Pushing herself to sitting, she squinted up at the cliffs. The lighthouse stood above her, but something was wrong. The weathered, abandoned structure she'd seen yesterday had transformed. Fresh white paint gleamed in the morning light. Black smoke curled from a chimney that had been crumbling just hours before. She checked her waterproof watch. The digital display had frozen at exactly midnight, but the sun suggested early morning. Had she been unconscious for hours? Movement caught her eye. A man descended the cliff path with surprising speed. He wore dark trousers and a heavy cable-knit sweater, with a cap pulled low over his brow. Most alarmingly, he carried what appeared to be a rifle. Emma struggled to her feet, wincing at the various pains that announced themselves. "Hello," she called. "I need help. My boat capsized in the storm." The man stopped several yards away, rifle not quite pointed at her, but held ready. His face was partially obscured by a neatly trimmed beard, but his eyes were sharp beneath heavy brows. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice deep and wary. "And what manner of craft is that?" He gestured toward a mangled piece of her equipment. "My name is Dr. Emma Morgan. I'm a marine biologist." She gestured to the damaged gear. "That's research equipment. My boat was caught in the storm last night." The man's eyes narrowed as he took in her appearance of quick-dry expedition pants, synthetic thermal layers, and waterproof hiking boots. Her clothing was perfectly normal for a 21st century scientist, but judging by his expression, utterly foreign to him. "No vessel reported distress signals," he stated flatly. "I maintained watch throughout the night." "I didn't have time to signal. The storm came up too quickly." She took a tentative step forward, and he raised the rifle slightly. "I just need to use a phone. My colleagues will be worried." His brow crumpled. "Phone?" Before Emma could respond, a woman's voice called from up the path. "Henry, is someone hurt?" A plump, middle-aged woman hurried down the trail, her long skirts gathered in one hand. She wore a high-necked blouse with a cameo brooch and a small hat pinned to her braying hair. For the first time, Emma realized the woman seemed to be wearing clothing from another century. "Mrs. Winters," the man, Henry, acknowledged without taking his eyes off Emma. "This woman claims her boat was wrecked, though no vessels passed the point last night." Mrs. Winters reached them, eyes focused on Emma's appearance. Good heavens, she's soaked through. "Put that rifle down, Henry Sullivan. Can't you see she's injured?" Henry reluctantly lowered the weapon. "We don't know who she is or where she came from." "I told you," Emma said, increasingly confused by their archaic speech and clothing. "My research vessel capsized during the storm. I'm a marine biologist studying bioluminescent phenomena in these waters." "She's delirious," Mrs. Winters declared. "Look at that gash on her head." She turned to Henry. "We need to get her warm and dry. Whatever her story is, we can't leave her here." As they debated her fate, Emma spotted a newspaper among her scattered belongings, apparently packed with her equipment for protection. The partially visible date read September 7, 1891. A practical joke? Some bizarre historical reenactment? "Where exactly am I?" Emma asked carefully. "Black Point Lighthouse," Henry replied, suspicion still evident in his tone. "Blackwater Cove Township is 3 miles south." "And today's date?" Henry and Mrs. Winters exchanged concerned glances. "September 7th, Mrs. Winters answered gently. 1891. Before Emma could process this impossible information, movement from the lighthouse caught her attention. A small figure appeared in the doorway, a little girl in a simple dress with a white pinafore, her pale blonde hair nearly silver in the morning light. "Clara," Henry called sharply, "go back inside." The child ignored him, descending the path with deliberate steps until she stood before Emma. Her eyes were an unusual silver blue, studying Emma with unnerving intensity. "You came through the water door," Clara stated matter-of-factly. "I saw you in my dream." "Clara!" Henry's voice was sharp with alarm. "That's enough." The girl reached toward Emma's scattered equipment, fascinated by a waterproof tablet. Henry quickly stepped between them, lifting Clara into his arms despite her protests. Mrs. Winters sighed. "We can't leave her here, Henry. She needs medical attention, and those strange items need to be collected before anyone else comes along." While they spoke, Clara reached over her father's shoulder toward a small vase of withered wildflowers someone had set on a nearby rock. As her tiny fingers brushed a dead bloom, Emma watched in astonishment as the flower briefly rejuvenated, buds swelling, petals unfurling, then withering again in seconds. Neither Henry nor Mrs. Winters seemed to notice. "Very well," Henry finally conceded. "Mrs. Winters, help her to the cottage. I'll gather these objects." His expression darkened. "But I want answers once she's recovered her senses." As Mrs. Winters guided Emma up the steep path, the lighthouse keeper's daughter turned to stare at her with those unsettling eyes. The water likes you, Clara whispered. It brought you to the right time.
Chapter 3, Out of Time.
The lighthouse keeper's quarters proved surprisingly comfortable. It was a modest stone cottage attached to the lighthouse tower itself. The main room contained a scarred wooden table, several mismatched chairs, and a small sofa near a coal-burning stove. Simple oil lamps hung from hooks in the ceiling beams, and nautical instruments occupied a shelf along one wall. What captured Emma's attention, however, were the papers scattered across the table. They were child's drawings intermixed with pages of complex mathematical equations and astronomical charts. Mrs. Winters, Abigail, as she'd insisted Emma call her, had provided a simple cotton dress and woolen shawl while Emma's modern clothing dried by the stove. Now she busied herself preparing tea while Henry Sullivan stored Emma's salvaged equipment in a locked cabinet. "I've sent word to Dr. Jones in town," Abigail said, setting a steaming cup before Emma. "He'll want to examine that head wound." Emma touched the bandage Abigail had applied. "It's just a minor laceration. I'm fine, really." Henry turned from the cabinet, his expression stern. "Now that you're settled, perhaps you can explain yourself more clearly. Your clothing and possessions are unlike anything I've encountered." Emma cradled the teacup, buying time. The evidence was mounting that the impossible had happened. Somehow, she'd traveled backward in time. The newspaper date, their clothing and speech patterns, the absence of electricity or modern conveniences, even the way the coastline had looked as they'd climbed the path, missed the developments she knew existed in her time. "I believe," she said carefully, "that I've experienced some kind of temporal displacement." Henry's face showed some frustration. "Meaning?" "I'm not from your time. I'm from the future, specifically from the year 2023. Silence fell. Abigail's hand crept to the cameo at her throat. Henry's expression shifted from suspicion to concern. "The poor woman has struck her head harder than we thought," Abigail murmured. "I understand how this sounds," Emma insisted, "but it's the only explanation that makes sense. Last night, in 2023, I was researching unusual light phenomena in these waters. There was a storm, electrical anomalies, and then I was drowning until I woke up here." Henry studied her intently. "That's quite a tale." "It's the truth. Those strange items you locked away, they're scientific instruments from my time. My clothing is made from synthetic materials that haven't been invented yet." Abigail exchanged another worried glance with Henry. "Perhaps we should have Dr. Jones examine more than just her head wound." "There are institutions for women suffering delusions," Henry agreed quietly. "I'm not delusional," Emma insisted. "Let me prove it." She racked her brain for historical knowledge that might convince them. "The current president is Benjamin Harrison. The first telephone exchange was established about 15 years ago. Thomas Edison recently demonstrated his motion picture camera." Henry looked unimpressed. Common knowledge, readily available in newspapers. Clara, who had been quietly drawing in the corner, suddenly stood. "Show them the light box that captured your soul." "Clara," Henry warned. "She has a picture-making box that holds people inside it," Clara persisted, "and a small window that lets her talk to people far away." Henry's face paled. "How could you know such things?" "She's right," Emma said. "I have a camera and a mobile phone among my possessions." The tension was broken by a knock at the door. A tall, austere man with silver-streaked hair and wire-rimmed spectacles entered without waiting for an invitation. "I came as quickly as I could," he announced, setting down a leather medical bag. "Mrs. Winters mentioned a shipwreck survivor?" "Dr. Edmund Jones," Abigail introduced. "This is Miss..." "Dr. Emma Morgan, Emma corrected. Dr. Blackwood raised an eyebrow. Doctor? Of medicine? Marine biology. A lady scientist? His tone made clear his skepticism. That's highly unusual. She claims to be from the future, Henry stated flatly. The year 2023. Dr. Jones' eyes sharpened with interest. Indeed, most fascinating. He turned to Emma. And what evidence supports this extraordinary claim? My belongings, the technology I carried. May I examine these items? Henry hesitated, then retrieved Emma's waterlogged phone from the locked cabinet. Dr. Jones turned it over in his hands, pressing the power button with no result. An electrical device of some kind, he mused, quite sophisticated. As he examined it, Clara moved to Emma's side, whispering, "He studies time too, but not like you do." Dr. Jones' head snapped up. What did she say? Nothing of consequence, Henry interjected, taking the phone and returning it to the cabinet. Clara, go to your room while the doctor examines our guest. Clara stared defiantly at Dr. Jones before complying. As she passed a small table holding a vase of flowers, Emma noticed the water ripple in reverse, droplets rising up the glass before settling again. After a cursory examination, Dr. Jones pronounced Emma physically sound apart from minor injuries. As he packed his bag, he studied her with unsettling intensity. I'd like to conduct further examinations at my office in town, he suggested. I have equipment better suited to unusual cases. That won't be necessary, Henry stated firmly. Miss Morgan will remain here until we determine her situation. Very well. Dr. Jones headed for the door, then paused. I've been researching certain atmospheric phenomena in this region. Perhaps your guests' fantasies might relate to my work. I'll return tomorrow for a more thorough discussion. After he left, an uncomfortable silence fell. Abigail busied herself preparing dinner, while Henry stared pensively out the window toward the darkening sea. Your daughter seems special, Emma ventured. Henry turned sharply. What did she tell you? Almost nothing. But I observe things professionally. She knows things she couldn't possibly know. Clara has an active imagination, Henry said stiffly. I saw what happened to the flowers on the rock, and just now, with the water in the vase. Henry's face drained of color. Before he could respond, a crash came from Clara's room, followed by an unnatural silence. They rushed to find the girl lying unconscious on the floor, surrounded by objects in strange states. There was a hairbrush with bristles elongated to impossible lengths, and a book with pages fluttering rapidly as if blown by wind despite the still air. Not again, Henry whispered, gathering his daughter in his arms. Water from a spilled cup hung suspended in midair, then suddenly splashed to the floor as Clara stirred. What's happening to her? Emma asked with concern when Clara had been settled in bed. Henry sank into a chair by the fireplace, suddenly looking much older than his years. It began when she was born, he said quietly. The night my Catherine died, bringing her into this world. He stared into the flames. There was a storm, like none I've ever seen. Blue lightning struck the lighthouse repeatedly, and when Clara took her first breath, time faltered. Faltered? The clock ran backward. Water flowed uphill. Candle flames froze in place. He ran a hand over his face. The midwife fled, claiming witchcraft. I've raised Clara alone, trying to hide her. Differences. These episodes, do they follow any pattern? Henry nodded slowly. They intensify with certain lunar phases, about every 28 days when the tide is highest. Emma's scientific mind raced. The same cycle as the bioluminescent phenomena I was studying in my time. You believe there's a connection? Hope flickered in his eyes. I think Clara may be connected to something extraordinary, a temporal anomaly centered around this lighthouse. Emma leaned forward. In my time, I detected energy patterns that defied explanation. They drew me here. From the doorway, Clara's small voice interrupted them. I opened the water door for you. I've been trying for so long to find someone who could help. Henry started to scold her for being out of bed, but Emma raised a hand to stop him. Help with what, Clara? The child's uncanny eyes met hers. To stop me from fading away.
Chapter 4, Temporal Physics.
These episodes are becoming more frequent, Henry explained as they watched Clara sleep. And afterward, she's exhausted, sometimes for days. Morning sunlight streamed through the eastern window of the cottage, highlighting the unnatural pallor of the child's skin. Beside the bed, Emma had arranged a series of simple experiments with cups of water, clock faces, and living plants to monitor for temporal distortions. I need to understand the mechanics of what's happening, Emma said. In my time, we have theories about temporal physics, the science of how time functions, but nothing that explains what Clara can do. She'd spent the early hours converting the lighthouse's small storage room into a makeshift laboratory, using salvaged equipment and whatever 19th century materials she could find. Henry had watched with fascination as she improvised measuring devices and recording systems. You truly believe she's affecting time itself? Henry asked. I've witnessed it firsthand. The question is whether it's conscious or involuntary, and why it's connected to lunar cycles. Henry retrieved a leather-bound journal from a shelf and handed it to Emma. I've been recording the episodes since she was 3 years old, with dates, times, and observed effects. Emma flipped through pages of meticulous notes, sketches, and calculations. Henry's handwriting was precise, his observations detailed. It was not the work of a simple lighthouse keeper, but a methodical, scientific mind. You've charted the lunar phases against her symptoms, she noted with surprise. This is excellent scientific methodology. A hint of pride crossed his face. I was educated before circumstances required I take this position. Catherine and I both enjoyed scientific pursuits, though such interests were discouraged in her. As Clara stirred, Emma noticed a cup by the bedside oscillate strangely. Water moved slightly into the air before settling again. What's happening is potentially revolutionary for our understanding of physics, Emma murmured. If I could document the energy patterns and create a stable model. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Henry opened the door to a broad-shouldered man with weather-beaten features and a captain's cap. I brought your monthly supplies, the visitor announced, setting down a crate. Heard you had excitement up here yesterday. Captain Pierce, Henry acknowledged. This is Dr. Morgan, our guest. Captain Pierce studied Emma with friendly curiosity. My name is Nathaniel Pierce, supply boat captain and occasional mail carrier. The town is buzzing with talk of a mysterious lady scientist washed ashore. Word travels fast, Emma observed with a concerned frown. She wasn't sure she wanted a lot of people to know of her existence. Not much happens in Blackwater Cove. A lady appearing from nowhere? That's a month's worth of gossip. His eyes twinkled. Especially one wearing men's trousers, according to Mrs. Winters. Henry's expression tightened. Captain Pierce is discreet, despite his teasing. Indeed, I am. Pierce lowered his voice. Which is why I wanted to warn you. Reverend Ward has been asking questions. He has mentioned organizing a welcoming party to call on your guest. Or no doubt he wants to determine if she's a corrupting influence, Henry said dryly. When the captain departed, Emma returned to her makeshift laboratory, soon deep in calculations. Henry found her there hours later, sketching diagrams on salvaged paper. I've plotted Clara's episodes against known lunar and tidal patterns, she explained. There's a clear correlation, but also anomalies that suggest multiple factors at work. Henry leaned over her shoulder, studying her work. His proximity sent an unexpected warmth through her body. His scent of sea air and wool, the brush of his breath against her hair. "You believe you can help her control these episodes?" he asked softly. "I believe I can help her understand them. Knowledge is power, especially with something this extraordinary." Their faces were inches apart, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her heartbeat quicken. For a moment, neither moved. "Papa?" Clara's small voice broke the tension. She stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "I'm hungry." Over a simple dinner, Emma was struck by the domestic harmony of their small family unit. Despite Henry's initial suspicion, he now discussed her theories with genuine interest, asking insightful questions. Clara, too, had blossomed in her presence, displaying the natural curiosity of a bright child alongside flashes of her unusual awareness. "When did you know you were different, Clara?" Emma asked gently. The girl considered this while cutting her potato. "I always knew. I see things before they happen. Sometimes I make things go fast or slow." She looked up. "People are afraid of me in town. They think I made Mama die." "Clara, that's not true," Henry said quickly. "It is true that they think it," Clara countered with child's logic. "Mrs. Hathaway at church said I was born wrong. That's why the clock in the town hall runs backward when I go near it." Before Henry could respond, a heavy knock echoed through the cottage. Henry opened the door to reveal a stern man in clerical garb, accompanied by several somber-faced villagers. "Reverend Ward," Henry acknowledged. "What brings you to the lighthouse at this hour?" "Concern for your spiritual welfare, Mr. Sullivan." The Reverend's gaze fixed on Emma, "and curiosity about your unusual houseguest." "Dr. Morgan was injured in a boating accident," Henry stated. "She's recovering under my roof as any Christian would permit." "Indeed?" The Reverend stepped inside uninvited, followers at his heels. "We've heard disturbing reports of strange lights and occurrences since her arrival." Emma rose to introduce herself, but Clara suddenly gasped, pointing at the Reverend's pocket. The man's watch had begun to spin backward, its metal case aging visibly, tarnishing before their eyes. Simultaneously, the Bible he carried crumbled at the edges, pages yellowing and disintegrating like time-lapse decay. "Witchcraft!" one of the women shrieked. "It's the child," another cried. "I told you she was unnatural." Reverend Ward stumbled backward, dropping his decaying Bible. "The Lord rebuke this ungodly influence." "Please leave my home," Henry commanded, positioning himself between the visitors and Clara. "Whatever you witnessed has a scientific explanation, which I'm not obligated to provide." After the stunned visitors departed, Emma examined Clara, noting alarming symptoms. A trickle of blood streamed from her nose, obvious exhaustion, and most worrying, a momentary transparency in her fingertips. "She's getting worse," Emma told Henry after Clara was asleep. "Each episode seems to take a physical toll on her. It's as if she's coming untethered from her own timeline." Henry's face was drawn with worry. "Can you help her?" "I'll try, but first we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Emma hesitated. "Has anything like this happened before? In your family history, or in this lighthouse's past?" Henry was silent for a long moment. "There might be records, journals kept by previous keepers. The lighthouse has always been different. That's why my wife's family traditionally maintained it." "Then we need to search," Emma said, determination hardening her voice. "Every inch of this place. There must be clues about what's happening to Clara and why I was brought here to witness it.
Chapter 5. The Lighthouse Journal.
Dawn found them exploring the lighthouse tower, examining every crevice and compartment for historical records. The circular staircase wound upward through the stone structure, passing storage rooms and mechanical areas before reaching the lantern room at the top. Catherine once mentioned her mother kept a journal, Henry explained as they climbed. Margaret was German, a scientist in her own right, though she had to hide her knowledge after immigrating. She served as assistant keeper before Catherine was born. The lantern room was dominated by the massive Fresnel lens that focused the lighthouse's beam across miles of ocean. Sunlight fractured through its crystal prisms, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. "Look for anything unusual," Emma instructed. "Hidden compartments, loose stones." Clara, who had insisted on joining them, moved straight to the eastern side of the lens housing. "The sun and moon both have to touch here," she said, pointing to a specific prism. Henry lifted her for a closer look. "There's something engraved in the metal, a symbol I've never noticed before." Emma examined the small mark, a crescent moon intersecting a circular sun. Pressing it revealed a hidden compartment containing a leather-bound journal with tarnished metal clasps. "Margaret's journal," Henry breathed. The pages contained dense German text interspersed with diagrams, mathematical equations, and astronomical charts. Some entries were in English and others in coded language, combining both. "Clara, how did you know this was here?" Emma asked. The girl shrugged. "Grandmother told me last night, in my dream." Emma touched Henry's arm with a shake of her head when she noticed he was about to question Clara about her dreams. It seemed that Clara had many paranormal gifts, and she didn't want the child to stop volunteering information because what she experienced scared her father. Henry's eyes darted between his daughter and Emma before falling silent. At least for now, Henry was willing to keep silent. They carried the journal down to the cottage, where Emma spread the pages across the table. With Henry's knowledge of German nautical terms and her scientific background, they began piecing together Margaret's extraordinary research. "She recognized the temporal anomalies decades ago," Emma marveled. "These equations, they're primitive versions of quantum field theory, concepts that won't be discovered in the scientific community for another half-century." She writes here about time slippage during specific astronomical alignments, Henry translated, and references to previous women in her family displaying similar awareness. A passage caught Emma's eye. "Die Zeitvectorin, the timekeeper." That's what she calls herself and the women in her lineage. "My wife's family," Henry confirmed quietly. "They've maintained this lighthouse for generations. I always assumed it was tradition, but what if it was necessity? What if they were deliberately positioned here to monitor this phenomenon? Or contain it," Emma suggested. "Look at these diagrams. The lighthouse isn't just a navigational aid. Its specific design elements seem engineered to focus or channel temporal energy." As evening approached, an elderly black man appeared at their door. His name was Isaiah Freeman, Henry explained, a hermit who lived in the woods beyond town. "The child is struggling," Isaiah observed, setting a small cloth bundle on the table. "These herbs will ease her physical symptoms, but they won't solve what ails her spirit." "You know about Clara's condition?" Emma asked curiously. Isaiah's weathered face creased in a smile. "My grandmother called it time-catching, said some souls weren't fully anchored in the river of time." He nodded toward Emma. "Like you, your light doesn't belong to this time, yet here you stand." "How can we help her?" Henry asked desperately. "The child needs balance. She exists in many times at once. Find what anchors her to this one." Isaiah touched the journal. The answers are there, but time is growing short. The barriers are thinning. After he departed, Clara demonstrated another facet of her abilities. She described in perfect detail how Emma had arrived by boat the day before her actual appearance. "I saw your light on the water," she explained. "It was bright blue, like the doorway I sometimes see in my dreams." "Time echoes," Emma murmured. She's perceiving events before and after they occur. Deepening her scientific investigation, Emma developed a theory. The lighthouse occupied a rare temporal convergence point where layers of time naturally overlapped like geological strata. Clara, born during a moment of maximum convergence, had somehow become a conduit between these layers. Late that night, as they continued deciphering Margaret's journal by lamplight, their hands brushed, reaching for the same page. A jolt of awareness passed between them, and for a moment, neither withdrew. Henry's calloused fingers rested lightly against her smoother ones, the contrast emblematic of their different times and lives. "I should," Henry began. "Yes," Emma agreed, but neither moved. His eyes held hers, something unspoken passing between them, before he finally pulled away. "It's late. You should rest." But rest eluded her as she lay awake, contemplating not just Clara's condition, but her own growing attachment to this impossible family from another century, and the lighthouse keeper, whose quiet strength and intelligence had begun to breach the walls she'd built around her heart.
Chapter 6. Lessons in Time.
"Breathe deeply," Emma instructed, sitting cross-legged across from Clara on the lighthouse gallery. "Imagine your breath as an anchor, holding you steady in this moment." Morning sunlight spilled across the Atlantic, turning the waves to hammered gold. Below them, Henry tended the lighthouse grounds, occasionally glancing up at their meditation session, with hope but skepticism. "Your emotions trigger the episodes," Emma continued. "When you feel upset or scared, your connection to this time weakens. The meditation helps you stay centered." Clara nodded seriously. "Like holding a rope in a storm." "Exactly." For the past week, Emma had been teaching Clara techniques adapted from her own stress management practices, such as visualization, controlled breathing, and mindfulness. The child proved an apt pupil, and her episodes were becoming less frequent and less severe. "I can see your light better now," Clara observed, opening her eyes. "But it flickers sometimes, like you're not quite here." "What do you mean?" "Everyone has a light. Papa's is steady and blue. Mine moves too fast. That's why things get strange around me. But yours," she tilted her head, "yours doesn't belong in this time. It pulls toward the future." Emma considered this. "Is that why you brought me here? To help stabilize your light?" Clara nodded with a tired sigh. "Grandmother said I needed a timekeeper to teach me, or I'd fade away. I've been looking for so long." As they descended the spiral staircase, Emma noticed Henry watching them with undisguised affection. Over the past days, his initial suspicion had transformed into gratitude and something warmer that she wasn't ready to name. "She seems calmer," he observed, "more present. She's making remarkable progress. Her temporal awareness is extraordinary. With proper guidance, she might learn to control it rather than be controlled by it." Henry's expression darkened. "If the town allows her the chance. Reverend Ward has been gathering support to have her examined by specialists in Portland." "You mean asylums," Emma translated grimly. "We won't let that happen." His eyebrows rose at her fierce tone. "We?" Heat rose to her cheeks. "I just meant—" "I know what you meant." His voice softened. "And I'm grateful. Clara has never connected with anyone as she has with you." Their awkward moment was interrupted by the arrival of a slender woman in a sensible navy dress. She introduced herself as Miss Eleanor Prescott, the town's schoolteacher, come to assess Clara's educational progress. "Mr. Sullivan," she greeted Henry with a warm smile before turning curious eyes to Emma. "And you must be Dr. Morgan. Your arrival has caused quite a stir in our little community." Unlike many of the townspeople, Miss Prescott showed neither fear nor suspicion, only curiosity. She quickly proved herself an ally, sharing historical context about local superstitions and offering to lend scientific texts from the school's small library. "I haven't dared to allow Clara to attend school with the other children," Henry explained. "Miss Prescott has offered to come once a week and teach her here." The coastal communities have always been more receptive to differences, Miss Prescott explained diplomatically while watching Clara demonstrate her reading skills. But even here, there are limits to what people will accept, particularly when it involves a child with Clara's unusual qualities. "So you've noticed," Henry said. "I'm a teacher, Mr. Sullivan. I observe." Her kind eyes turned to Clara. "She's a remarkable child, brilliant beyond her years in mathematics and natural sciences. Whatever makes her different also gives her gifts that should be nurtured, not feared." After assessing Clara's knowledge, which was advanced for her age in some subjects and typical in others, Miss Prescott departed with a promise to return at her usual time. That evening, as Clara slept, Emma and Henry continued their scientific investigation. Using the astronomical charts from Margaret's journal and Henry's lighthouse records, they created a detailed timeline mapping celestial events against Clara's symptoms. The upcoming lunar eclipse coincides with an unusually high tide, Emma noted. According to these patterns, it will create maximum temporal energy and possibly enough to open a stable pathway between times. "It's a way for you to return home," Henry said quietly. The possibility hung between them, creating an unexpected ache in Emma's chest. In just a week, this lighthouse and its inhabitants had become more significant to her than anything in her modern life. "I'm not certain I want to return," she admitted, surprising herself with the truth of it. Henry studied her face in the lamplight. "Your own time must miss you. Your family, your work." "I have colleagues, not family. My parents died years ago. My marriage ended because my husband and I lived parallel lives rather than shared ones." She traced a finger along the chart. "My research drew me here for a reason. Perhaps this is where I'm meant to be." Henry rose abruptly and crossed to an old sea chest in the corner. From it, he withdrew a small wooden box. "These were Catherine's," he said, opening it to reveal books, scientific journals, and delicate instruments. She hid her interests from most of the town, but she was as much a scientist as any man. When Clara was born with her differences, Catherine had been studying astronomical phenomena. Emma gently examined the books, which were advanced mathematics, astronomy, and physics, all containing Catherine's neat annotations. "She would have understood what's happening to Clara," Henry continued, pain evident in his voice. "I've done my best, but I lack her insight." "You've done remarkably," Emma assured him. "Your observations and records gave us the foundation for everything we've discovered." In the soft lamplight, with history and science spread before them like a map to understanding, something shifted between them. The barriers of time and circumstance seemed to thin, just as the temporal layers around the lighthouse periodically aligned. The next evening, standing at the window while Henry checked the lighthouse lantern, Emma watched him demonstrate celestial navigation to Clara. The child's delighted laugh floated down, and Emma felt a yearning so powerful it took her breath away. Not for her modern life and its technologies, but for this simple existence with these two extraordinary people who had claimed pieces of her heart. The scientist in her knew the approaching eclipse might offer her only chance to return home. The woman in her was beginning to question whether home was a place she'd left behind or the one she'd unexpectedly found.
Chapter 7. Temporal Fractures.
Emma woke to screaming. The cottage walls shimmered like heat waves, solid one moment and transparent the next. Through the flickering surfaces, she glimpsed impossible scenes. The same room was decorated differently, abandoned and dusty, and renovated with modern fixtures. The floor beneath her feet seemed uncertain, sometimes wood, sometimes concrete, and occasionally nothing at all. Clara's terrified cries echoed from upstairs, distorted as if coming from multiple times at once. "Henry!" Emma shouted, stumbling toward the staircase only to find it stretching impossibly before her. Each step seemed miles apart. "I can't reach her." Henry's voice came from somewhere above, equally distorted. "The hallway keeps changing." Emma forced herself forward, witnessing fractures in reality with each step. A door opened onto the lighthouse gallery 50 years in the future, automated and abandoned. Another revealed a scene from what must have been Henry's past. There was a woman in childbirth, with doctors rushing around her. Time was splintering around them, fragments of past and future bleeding into the present. When she finally reached Clara's room, the child was curled in the center of her bed, surrounded by a maelstrom of temporal distortions. Objects from different eras materialized and vanished. Emma saw electric lamps, quill pens, and devices she couldn't identify from times perhaps yet to come. "Clara!" she called, pushing through resistance like thick syrup. "Focus on my voice. Remember your anchor." The girl's eyes snapped open, silver blue irises glowing with unnatural light. "I saw too much," she whimpered, "all the times at once." Henry finally broke through from another doorway, looking disoriented. Together, they reached Clara, creating a protective barrier with their bodies. "Breathe with me," Emma instructed, demonstrating the meditation technique. "Find this moment. Only this one." Gradually, slowly, reality stabilized. The temporal fractures closed, though occasional aftershocks rippled through the room, with objects briefly aging or rejuvenating, and shadows moving independent of their sources. Through the window, Emma saw multicolored lights emanating from the lighthouse tower that were visible for miles. "The town will have seen this," Henry said grimly. By morning, evidence of the temporal event was everywhere. Furniture aged decades overnight, modern objects inexplicably embedded in walls, and Clara's drawings showing impossible scenes from different eras. More troubling was what Emma glimpsed through her bedroom window during the event. Her modern apartment was dusty and abandoned, and mail was piled high on the untouched table. It was if she'd been gone for months, not days. Their fears about the town's reaction proved justified when Dr. Jones arrived with Sheriff Walter Simmons. He was a stocky man with a perpetual frown and nervous eyes. "Those lights were visible from Portland," Jones stated stoically. "The authorities are asking questions I can't answer." Sheriff Simmons twisted his hat in his hands. "Reverend Ward is calling for an investigation into these unnatural events." "There's nothing unnatural occurring here," Henry maintained, "merely scientific phenomena we don't yet understand." Dr. Jones's gaze fixed on Clara, who huddled against Emma's side. "The child is clearly unwell. As a medical professional, I'm concerned about her condition and about the influence of certain parties." His eyes flicked meaningfully to Emma. "Dr. Morgan has been helping Clara," Henry stated firmly. "Has she? These disturbances increased with her arrival." Dr. Jones stepped closer. "I've studied unusual phenomena for years, Miss Morgan. Your sudden appearance, coinciding with escalating temporal anomalies, cannot be coincidental." "Temporal anomalies?" Sheriff Simmons echoed nervously. "Doctor, you promised we were investigating atmospheric electricity." "A simplified explanation for simple minds." Dr. Jones dismissed the sheriff, who frowned at his words. "What's happening here is far more significant." He focused on Clara. "The child is a temporal catalyst. She is a living bridge between time streams. Under proper scientific supervision, she could advance our understanding by decades." "She's an 8-year-old girl, not a laboratory specimen," Emma snapped, even as she recognized the true reason why Dr. Jones was so interested in Clara. He wanted to study her, to use her. "And she's my daughter," Henry added, steel in his voice. "She remains under my protection." Their confrontation was interrupted by the arrival of a slender man with intelligent eyes and a journalist's notebook. He introduced himself as William Jeffries from the Boston Chronicle, investigating reports of strange lights along the coast. "There are fascinating accounts from the village," he commented, studying the lighthouse with keen interest. "Multicolored illumination, time discrepancies, and objects aging overnight." "Overwrought imaginations," Henry deflected. "Perhaps," Jeffrey smiled, "or perhaps something more interesting. I've documented similar phenomena throughout New England's history, where clusters of temporal discontinuities centered on certain locations." After the visitors departed with lingering suspicions and promises to return, tension hung heavy in the lighthouse cottage. "They'll try to take her," Henry said, watching Clara through the window as she sat listlessly on the cliff edge, staring at the ocean. "Dr. Jones has connections to scientific societies that would see her as nothing more than a research subject." "We won't let that happen," Emma assured him, the fierceness of her protection surprising even herself. When Clara was safely occupied with her lessons, Emma and Henry retreated to the lighthouse gallery to speak privately. "There's something I haven't told you," Emma admitted. "During last night's event, I saw my apartment, my home in 2023. It looked abandoned, as if I'd been gone for months, not days." "Time might flow differently between our periods," Henry suggested. "Or my presence here is becoming more fixed as Clara's stability increases." She hesitated. "Henry, I think I meant to stay. Everything that's happened, my research drawing me here, and Clara's specific need for someone with my scientific background, it can't be coincidence." Henry's face betrayed conflicting emotions. "You would abandon your own time, your life, your work?" "My work brought me to you." The admission hung between them. "To both of you." Something broke in Henry's careful reserve. He stepped forward, one hand rising to touch her cheek with a gentleness that made her heart stutter. "Since Catherine's death, I've lived only for Clara," he said softly. "I never expected to feel." Words failed him. Instead, he lowered his mouth to hers in a kiss both tentative and profound. A man who had forgotten his own needs and now rediscovered them in an impossible woman from another time. Emma responded with a hunger that surprised them both, her hands gripping his shoulders as years of intellectual isolation dissolved in human connection. When they finally parted, breathless, the lighthouse around them seemed to hum with energy. It was as if time itself approved their unlikely union. "What happens now?" Henry whispered against her hair. "We protect Clara," she answered, "and we find a way to stabilize her abilities before they consume her." The unspoken question, whether Emma would be able to stay or be forced to return to her own time, remained between them, a temporal fracture of its own that would eventually demand resolution.
Chapter 8. The Vanishing.
"Henry! Dr. Emma!" Mrs. Winters burst through the cottage door, face flushed with exertion. "Clara's run off. I took her to town to do some shopping. 1 minute she was at my side, and then next she suddenly was nowhere to be found." Emma's blood ran cold. "When did you last see her?" "Just after noon. She overheard some of the townswomen talking at the general store. Unkind things about the lighthouse, and unnatural occurrences." Mrs. Winters wrung her hands. The poor child looked devastated. A sudden squall had materialized over the bay, dark clouds swirling in patterns that defied meteorological norms. Lightning flickered in blue-white arcs, reminding Emma of the storm that had brought her across time. "This weather isn't natural," Henry said, grabbing his oilskin coat. "It's connected to Clara's emotional state." They rushed toward town, but evidence of Clara's distress manifested before they reached it. Rain fell upward in defiance of gravity. Birds flew backward, their calls distorted and reversed. Most disturbing were the footprints along the muddy path. They appeared before being made, as if time ran forward and backward simultaneously. The townspeople huddled in doorways, watching the unnatural phenomena with fear. Some made signs against evil as Henry and Emma passed. "The lighthouse curse spreads," one woman hissed. "First the keeper's foreign wife, now his unnatural child. Henry Sullivan should have taken that child to an asylum where she belongs," a fisherman muttered, not quite under his breath. Henry's jaw tightened, but he remained focused on their search. As they moved through the town, Emma experienced disorienting shifts. There were brief moments when the modern version of Blackwater Cove superimposed over the 19th century reality. A gas street lamp flickered briefly as an electric pole with power lines, then reverted. A horse-drawn wagon momentarily appeared as a pickup truck before shifting back. "Henry," she whispered, "the temporal boundaries are breaking down. Clara's distress is accelerating the process." "She couldn't have gotten far," he reasoned. "Not in this weather." They found Captain Pierce securing his vessel against the unnatural storm. "I saw a little girl heading toward the southern caves about an hour past," he reported. "Thought it strange, given the weather coming in. Would the child be your Clara?" "The tidal caves?" Henry's face paled. "Those flood completely at high tide, which is," he checked his pocket watch, "less than an hour from now." Captain Pierce immediately offered his boat. "It will be faster than trying to reach them by the coastal path in this weather. I'll take you." Henry immediately accepted Captain Pierce's offer, and soon they were on the boat, fighting through increasingly violent seas. Henry revealed the cave's significance. "My mother-in-law Margaret documented unusual temporal energy concentrations there. It's where Catherine first displayed awareness of time fluctuations as a child." His knuckles whitened on the gunwale. Margaret believed the cave system formed a natural amplifier for temporal phenomena. Rounding the rocky point, they spotted Clara's small figure on a narrow strip of beach near the cave entrance. Around her, water behaved strangely, forming a spinning vortex that defied gravity, droplets suspended in midair before reversing direction. "My God," Captain Pierce whispered, "what is that?" "A temporal whirlpool," Emma answered, understanding instinctively. "Clara's emotional distress is creating a breach between time streams." "She'll be drowned when the tide comes in," Henry said desperately. "Pierce, get us as close as you can." The captain maneuvered skillfully through the turbulent waters, but could approach no closer than 50 yards from shore. "I'll swim," Emma decided, already removing her heavy outer clothing. "The currents," Henry began, "are temporal as much as physical," she finished. "I've crossed this barrier before. I might have a better chance." Before he could protest further, she dove into the churning sea. The water felt strange against her skin, alternately warm and cold, sometimes seeming to flow backward. As she approached the temporal vortex surrounding Clara, reality fragmented around her. Emma experienced her own timeline, like pages of a book riffled by an invisible hand. She saw herself as a child learning to swim, as a graduate student collecting samples, and as she would be decades hence with silver in her hair. Most startling was a glimpse of herself in period clothing, standing beside Henry with a teenaged Clara between them. It was a potential future if she remained in this time. "Clara!" she called, fighting through the disorienting visions. "Focus on my voice." The child turned, her eyes glowing with the same unearthly light Emma had witnessed during her worst episode. "I'm a monster," she sobbed. "The town is right. I'm unnatural." "You're extraordinary, not unnatural," Emma countered, inching closer through the temporal distortion. "Your abilities are a gift, not a curse." "I hurt people. I make things wrong." "You didn't choose this, Clara, but you can choose what to do with it." Emma extended her hand, though the shifting temporal energies made the distance between them seem to stretch and contract. "Your father needs you. I need you." "Why? So you can study me like Dr. Jones wants to?" Clara shouted. "Because I care about you," Emma said simply. "Because in just a short time, you've become as important to me as anyone in my own time." Something in Clara's expression shifted. The temporal energy surrounding her flickered. "You want to stay with us?" she asked in a small voice. "I'm beginning to believe I was meant to be here with you and your father." As Clara's focus turned from despair to hope, the temporal vortex began to stabilize. She reached for Emma's outstretched hand just as a massive wave, born of the unnatural storm, surged toward the beach. Henry, who had followed despite the danger, reached them as the wave struck. All three were submerged in churning water charged with temporal energy. Emma felt reality slipping further, glimpsing multiple timelines simultaneously, and possibilities branching like lightning across her consciousness. Through sheer determination, Henry dragged them back to Pierce's boat. Clara lay unconscious but breathing, her skin unnaturally pale except where blue veins showed beneath the surface. "She's stabilized for now," Emma reported after examining her. "But the effects of the temporal exposure are worsening. The water from her clothes, look." They watched in astonishment as water dripping from Clara's dress evaporated and then reconstituted repeatedly. When Henry checked her pulse, he jerked back in shock. Her heart beat. It beats fast and then slow. "She's becoming untethered from normal time flow," Emma explained. "We're running out of time to anchor her properly to this reality." As Pierce navigated back toward the lighthouse, Emma cradled Clara's small form, feeling the weight of responsibility for this child's existence across multiple timelines. The lighthouse beam cut through the unnatural storm, a reminder of their mission, not just to protect Clara, but perhaps to safeguard the very fabric of time itself.
Chapter 9. Threads of Time.
"What exactly did you see in the temporal vortex?" Henry asked, his voice low to avoid waking Clara, who finally slept peacefully after hours of distress. They sat before the cottage fireplace, wrapped in blankets against the chill that followed their near drowning. Outside, the unnatural storm had subsided, though temporal after-effects lingered. Clocks throughout the lighthouse ran at different speeds, and objects occasionally aged or rejuvenated without pattern. "Fragments of multiple timelines," Emma explained. "Past, future, and possibilities that might never materialize." She hesitated. "Including a future where I remained here, with you and Clara?" Henry's eyes reflected the firelight. Was it a good future? It seemed so. She smiled softly. Clara was a teenager and looked healthy and confident. "You were content?" "And you?" "I looked like I belonged." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. "There's more," Emma continued. "I believe Clara isn't just affecting time. She's potentially rewriting it. The temporal energy she channels could be altering events across multiple timelines." Henry frowned. "What evidence suggests this?" Emma gestured to a shelf where family photographs stood in simple frames. "Those photographs have been changing. Yesterday, the one of Clara as an infant showed only you holding her. This morning, I noticed it briefly showed Catherine alive, holding Clara, before reverting." Henry stared at the photographs with new understanding. Is she unconsciously trying to bring her mother back? Possibly. Or the instability in her temporal connection is causing ripple effects through her own history. Emma leaned forward. "Henry, I think these changes explain her physical symptoms, the nosebleeds, the exhaustion, and moments of transparency. She's literally rewriting her own existence. How do we stop it?" "I'm not certain we can, but we might be able to stabilize it." Their discussion was interrupted by a knock. William Jeffries had returned, his expression both excited and concerned. "I've brought information that might interest you," he announced, producing a portfolio of newspaper clippings and photographs. "There are documented cases of temporal anomalies throughout New England's history. They are mostly centered around certain thin places where reality seems more permeable." The evidence was compelling. Reports dating back to the 1700s describing phenomena similar to what they'd witnessed, around Clara of time distortions, objects aging rapidly, and glimpses of past and future events. "You're more knowledgeable about these events than a typical journalist would be," Emma observed. Jeffrey smiled. "Perceptive. I represent certain scientific interests that investigate temporal phenomena. We've documented dozens of cases like Clara's throughout history." "There are others like her?" Henry asked, hope evident in his voice. "Similar, though none quite as powerful. Most temporal sensitives experience only fleeting awareness of other time streams. Clara appears to directly influence them." Their research expanded when Miss Prescott arrived with historical texts from the town archives, followed unexpectedly by a Native American woman who introduced herself as Misha Cloud. "My people have stories of this place," Misha explained. "We called it Where Times Meet. Our shaman would come here to commune with ancestors and those yet to be born." By evening, they had assembled evidence from multiple sources suggesting Clara's condition was approaching a critical point. The upcoming lunar eclipse, combined with an unusually high tide, would create maximum temporal energy, a convergence that could either stabilize Clara's abilities or erase her from existence entirely. "The eclipse is 4 days from now," Emma calculated. "We need to develop a stabilization method before then." After their visitors departed, Clara demonstrated her growing awareness by creating a small, controlled temporal bubble where a dropped teacup reassembled itself. The effort cost her, however. Afterward, she lay pale and exhausted, her small hands occasionally becoming transparent enough to see the bedsheet through them. That night, as they maintained vigil by Clara's bedside, Henry shared parts of himself he'd kept hidden. He spoke of his education at Harvard before family obligations forced him to abandon his studies, his courtship of Catherine against her family's wishes, and his dreams of scientific recognition now channeled into Clara's future. "I never expected to feel anything again after Catherine died," he admitted quietly. "I existed solely for Clara." His eyes met Emma's across the sleeping child. "Until you washed ashore and upended every certainty." "I never expected to find something worth staying for," she responded. "My work was everything. It was a place to hide after my marriage failed. Martin and I were colleagues first, and then spouses, but never truly partners. When it ended, I buried myself deeper in research. And now? Now I find myself caring more about what happens in this lighthouse than anything I left behind. Their confession hung in the air between them. It was a bridge across time, as tangible as the connection growing between them. Their vigil was shattered when Clara suddenly cried out, her body becoming transparent, insubstantial as mist. For terrifying minutes, they could again see through her to the bedding beneath, their hands passing through her form when they tried to touch her. Just as suddenly, she solidified again, sobbing with fear and confusion. "I was nowhere," she whimpered. "I couldn't find my way back." As they comforted her, Emma and Henry exchanged looks of deepening concern. Clara was losing her anchor to this time stream. Without intervention, she might fade completely during the coming eclipse. Whatever choice Emma had been contemplating about returning to her own time seemed increasingly irrelevant. Clara needed her here and now. She was a child caught between times, holding on by an ever more fragile thread.
Chapter 10. The Lighthouse Keeper's Secret.
"The lighthouse itself is the key," Henry explained, unrolling architectural drawings across the table. It wasn't built merely as a navigational aid. The morning after Clara's terrifying episode, he had revealed a hidden room beneath the lighthouse, accessed through a trapdoor cleverly concealed beneath the coal storage. The underground chamber contained generations of records, astronomical calculations, and scientific instruments of unusual design. My wife's family, the Schmidts, were specifically chosen as keepers because of their temporal sensitivity. Henry indicated faded letters bearing official seals. This lighthouse was commissioned in 1823 after multiple ships reported time discrepancies in these waters. Sailors lost days, arrived in port before they departed, or witnessed ghostly ships from different eras. "A temporal convergence point," Emma mused, examining the lighthouse plans. "And the design. These aren't standard lighthouse specifications." "No. Look at these geometric patterns in the masonry, the specific arrangement of the prism lenses." Henry traced the unusual elements. They're designed to channel and stabilize temporal energy using light refracted through specific minerals. Emma's scientific mind raced. It's a temporal regulator disguised as a lighthouse. Brilliant! They spent hours studying Margaret's complete journal, which contained partial instructions for a ritual to stabilize time rifts. The text combined scientific notation with seemingly mystical language, but Emma recognized underlying principles that anticipated quantum theory by a century. "Your mother-in-law understood concepts that won't be formally discovered until the late 20th century, she told Henry. She intuitively grasped quantum mechanics and temporal physics without the mathematical framework to fully express it. The journal referenced a crucial component, a blue crystal of specific composition that amplified and focused temporal energy. Margaret calls it Zeitkristall, time crystal, Henry translated. It was set into the original lens assembly, but was lost during a temporal disturbance shortly before Clara was born. Without it, the lighthouse can't properly regulate the convergence point, Emma realized. That's why Clara's abilities are unstable. She's trying to perform the lighthouse's regulatory function without the proper focus. William Jeffries returned that afternoon with additional information about the crystal. According to records, it was a unique mineral found only at this specific location. It had crystallized form of quantum-entangled particles that can synchronize temporal energy across multiple time streams. Clara, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "I can see it." The adults turned to find her eyes glowing with silver-blue light. "The crystal," she continued, "it's in a glass case with a little card. People look at it but don't understand what it is. With Eliza's help and concentrating visibly, Clara projected an image into the air between them, a holographic-like vision of a museum display case containing a brilliant blue crystal. The placard beside it read, "Blackwater Cove Historical Society, unusual mineral specimen found in lighthouse ruins, 1972. "That's in my time," Emma whispered. "The Historical Society still exists in 2023. I passed it when I arrived in town." "The crystal exists in your future," Jeffries concluded, "which explains why you were drawn here. Your research detected its energy signature across time." Henry voiced the unavoidable question. If the crystal exists in Emma's time, how can we possibly retrieve it? "I might be able to create a window," Clara suggested quietly, "like I did when I brought Dr. Emma here, but it would take all my strength." "And potentially destabilize you completely," Emma objected. "It's too dangerous." "There may be another option," Jeffries offered. "During the eclipse, when temporal barriers naturally thin, someone might cross over briefly to retrieve it." The implication hung heavy in the air. Emma could return to her time for the crystal, but she might remain trapped there, unable to return to Henry and Clara. "We need to decide quickly," Henry said grimly. "The eclipse is 3 days away." Their planning was interrupted by Dr. Jones's unexpected arrival with troubling news. Town authorities had been contacted about forcefully removing Clara to a hospital for observation. "I've delayed them temporarily," Dr. Jones reported, "but Reverend Ward is persuasive. They'll return with official papers, likely tomorrow." After Dr. Jones departed, the reality of their situation now solidified. Retrieving the blue crystal would likely require Emma to return to her own time, potentially forever, while remaining might not save Clara without the crystal's stabilizing influence. Alone in the lighthouse gallery that evening, Emma confronted the choice before her. The modern world seemed increasingly distant. Her apartment, her laboratory, her colleagues all fading in importance compared to the lighthouse keeper and his extraordinary daughter who had claimed her heart. Henry found her there, starlight filtering through the great lens to cast prismatic patterns across the floor. "If I return for the crystal," she said with a worried look, "there's a significant probability I won't be able to come back, but I will do my best to send it through." "I know." His voice was rough with emotion. "If I stay without retrieving it, Clara might fade from existence during the eclipse." Henry stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I won't ask you to sacrifice your world for ours. That choice must be yours alone." "My world," Emma echoed, gazing out at the timeless ocean. He drew her into his arms, his kiss carrying all the complexity of their impossible situation, desire tempered by uncertainty and hope shadowed by impending loss. When they separated, breathless, the decision felt both clearer and more painful. "We'll find a way," Henry promised, "together." Later, as Clara slept fitfully between them on the cottage sofa, they continued planning for the eclipse ritual. Whether Emma would cross the temporal barrier remained undecided, but they would be prepared either way.
Chapter 11. The Town's Suspicion.
The unnatural weather persisted as the eclipse approached. Fishermen reported tides occurring at wrong times, disrupting their livelihoods. Clocks throughout Blackwater Cove ran at different speeds, making business transactions and train schedules impossible to coordinate. Livestock aged rapidly, with newborn calves growing to adulthood overnight. Fear and confusion spread, seeking targets for blame. "Emergency town meeting," the church bells proclaimed at noon, 2 days before the eclipse. Henry, Emma, and Clara made their way to the town hall, aware of the hostile stares following them. The hall was packed with frightened, angry citizens. Reverend Ward stood at the podium, his expression righteous and severe, while Dr. Jones sat nearby with Sheriff Simmons. "Citizens of Blackwater Cove," Reverend Ward began, "we face unprecedented disruptions to God's natural order. These aberrations began with the arrival of a stranger in our midst, a woman claiming scientific knowledge while practicing ungodly arts." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "The lighthouse has always been a place apart," the Reverend continued, "but under Henry Sullivan's stewardship, it has become a center of disturbance, affecting our entire community. His daughter's unfortunate condition, exacerbated by this woman's influence, threatens our very way of life." Dr. Jones rose to speak. "As a man of science, I can assure you these phenomena have rational explanations. However, the child requires specialized treatment that cannot be provided in a lighthouse. For her own safety, Clara Sullivan should be removed to proper facilities." "He is not concerned for Clara's safety," Emma whispered to Henry. "Once Clara's there, Dr. Jones will have unlimited access to study her abilities." The crowd's mood darkened further as townspeople offered testimonies of strange occurrences, such as watches running backward, mirrors showing different reflections than the people before them, and birds flying in impossible patterns. "The solution is clear," Reverend Ward proclaimed. "The stranger must leave our community, and the child must receive proper institutional care." "No." Henry's voice cut through the clamor as he strode forward. "My daughter remains under my protection, as is my legal right as her father. When a child presents dangers to the community has rights as well," Sheriff Simmons countered. "What dangers has Clara ever presented?" Henry demanded. "She's an 8-year-old girl with a condition she didn't choose." "A condition that's disrupting nature itself," someone shouted. As tensions escalated, the church bell began striking continuously of its own accord. Then, to the horror and fascination of all present, it began striking backward, the sound reversing into silence before each clang. All eyes turned to Clara, who stood wide-eyed and frightened beside Emma. "Proof!" Reverend Ward cried triumphantly. "The child's influence manifests before our eyes." "It's not her fault," Emma interjected, stepping forward. "What's happening is a natural phenomenon centered on the lighthouse, one that has occurred cyclically for generations. Clara is sensitive to it, not causing it." "And who are you to make such claims?" Dr. Jones challenged. "A mysterious woman who appeared from nowhere with strange devices and stranger ideas." "She's a scientist," Henry stated firmly, moving to stand beside her, "and she's helping Clara understand her abilities rather than fear them." "Which is why the disruptions have worsened since her arrival," Reverend Ward countered. Eleanor Prescott unexpectedly rose from her seat. "I've been teaching Clara," she announced. "She's brilliantly intelligent, gentle-natured, and deserving of our protection, not our fear." "Your position in our school may need reconsideration, Miss Prescott," the Reverend threatened. William Jeffries entered the hall, drawing attention with his confident stride. "I believe I can offer perspective," he announced. "I represent the Atlantic Temporal Research Society, an organization that has documented similar phenomena throughout New England's history." "Temporal research?" Dr. Jones' interest visibly sharpened. Mr. Jeffries nodded. "What you're witnessing are natural fluctuations in temporal energy, heightened by the approaching eclipse. The Sullivan family has traditionally served as caretakers of this energy convergence and maintaining balance for generations." "Blasphemy!" Reverend Ward protested. "This is spiritual corruption, not some scientific curiosity." Sheriff Simmons cleared his throat. "Regardless of the cause, the disruptions are affecting the entire town. As sheriff, I'm obligated to protect the majority. I'll be bringing papers tomorrow to temporarily remove Clara Sullivan to the county hospital for observation. You cannot separate a child from her father without due process, Henry objected. In cases of public endangerment, I can and will, the sheriff countered, unless these disturbances cease immediately. As the meeting dissolved into argument, Emma stepped forward with a calculated risk. The unusual conditions will peak with the eclipse, then subside, she announced confidently. I predict a major storm will strike the town tomorrow, an event I couldn't possibly know unless my scientific understanding is correct. Her knowledge of historical weather patterns from her research provided this advantage. She remembered reading about the destructive storm of September 1891 that had damaged much of Blackwater Cove. "Give us until after the eclipse," she requested. "If conditions don't improve as I've predicted, then follow whatever course you deem necessary." The specificity of her prediction created enough doubt to win them a temporary reprieve. As they left the hall, however, the hostile stares made clear their position remained precarious. "They'll come for her regardless," Henry said grimly as they hurried back to the lighthouse. "For both of you." "Not if we succeed with the eclipse ritual," Emma replied. "We have less than 48 hours to prepare." They worked through the night, arranging the lighthouse according to Margaret's instructions. They positioned mirrors to reflect moonlight through specific points during the eclipse, created a geometric pattern on the floor where Clara would stand, and prepared salt water from different tidal faces to form a stabilizing circle. "If I have to return to my time for the crystal," Emma told Henry as dawn approached, "I want you to know these weeks have meant more to me than all my years of research or recognition." "And if you can't come back?" he asked, voice rough with emotion. "Then I'll find a way to leave a message through time, to let you know I tried." The storm Emma had predicted arrived with devastating force, validating her prediction and sending many skeptical townspeople to the lighthouse for shelter, including some who had spoken against them the previous day. As the storm raged, Emma and Henry shared private moments planning their future together if she remained. With a life built around the lighthouse, raising Clara, perhaps advancing scientific understanding within the constraints of the time. Neither spoke of the alternative, that tomorrow's eclipse might separate them across centuries with no way to bridge the gap.
Chapter 12. Echoes of the Future.
"I see it more clearly now," Clara announced, her silver-blue eyes reflecting the morning light as she sketched rapidly on paper spread across the floor. "The crystal is in a glass case with other lighthouse artifacts." After a night of fierce storms, the day before the eclipse dawned strangely calm. Clara's temporal awareness had sharpened dramatically. She could now glimpse specific locations and objects in Emma's timeline with increasing clarity. "Can you draw what you see around it?" Emma asked, kneeling beside her. "Any details that might help locate it precisely?" Clara's small hand moved, recreating the Historical Society's layout in perfect detail. She drew display cases, photographs on walls, and even the modern security system Emma recognized from her brief visit to the town before her temporal displacement. "That's remarkable," Henry marveled, spreading a map of the modern town that Emma had sketched from memory. "Can we correlate this to current locations?" Together, they triangulated the crystal's position using Clara's visions and Emma's knowledge of modern Blackwater Cove. The Historical Society occupied what was currently the Harbor Master's office, a building that would survive another century and a half. "I'll need to enter during night hours," Emma realized. "The security appears minimal, but there would be visitors during the day." "You speak as if you've decided to go," Henry said quietly. Emma straightened, meeting his eyes. "Without the crystal, Clara's condition will worsen until she potentially fades from existence. The choice seems clear." And if you can't return? She touched his face gently. I will send the crystal back first, and I'll live knowing I saved her, even if it meant losing you both. Their intimate moment was interrupted when Clara suddenly gasped, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The air around her shimmered like heat waves, and within the distortion appeared a young woman in early 20th century clothing, a teenager with Clara's silver blue eyes and Catherine's delicate features. "Clara?" Henry whispered, reaching toward the apparition. "Hello, Father," the teenage Clara replied, her voice oddly doubled, coming from both the vision and the child before them. "Dr. Morgan, I don't have much time." "You're from the future?" Emma asked, scientific mind racing to understand. "From a potential future," the older Clara corrected. "One where your plan succeeds. I've created a stable temporal loop to deliver critical information." She looked directly at Emma. "You don't need to stay in 2023. The crystal can be returned by someone already connected to the temporal convergence." "William Jeffries," Emma realized. "He's from my time." The teenage Clara nodded. "A temporal agent stationed here to monitor this specific anomaly. His organization has tracked time slippages for centuries." "How can we trust him?" Henry asked. "Because in my timeline, he succeeds." The apparition began to fade. The eclipse creates a 37-second window at precisely midnight. After that, the pathways seal permanently. As the vision dissolved, Clara collapsed, blood trickling from her nose. The temporal effort had cost her severely, but the information was invaluable. "We need to find Mr. Jeffries," Emma said urgently. They located him at the town's only boarding house, and his reaction to their information confirmed their suspicions. "I wondered when Clara would make the connection," he admitted. "Yes, I represent an organization that monitors and occasionally traverses temporal boundaries. We call ourselves Chronos Initiative. We were founded centuries ago to study and protect temporal convergence points like this lighthouse." "You've been manipulating us," Henry accused. "Guiding, not manipulating," Mr. Jeffries corrected. "Historical records showed Clara survived this period with assistance from a woman from the future, but details were sparse. I couldn't interfere too directly without risking timeline contamination." "Can you retrieve the crystal from my time?" Emma pressed. "It's possible. I've made similar crossings before, though never during an event as powerful as tomorrow's eclipse." He studied them thoughtfully. "But this raises a question. If I retrieve the crystal, what becomes of you, Dr. Morgan? Will you return to your time or remain here?" The question Emma had been wrestling with for days now demanded an answer. "I choose to stay," she said, feeling certainty settle over her. "My research led me here for a reason. Clara needs ongoing guidance from someone who understands both the science and the experience of temporal displacement." Henry's expression softened with emotion. "Are you certain? You would abandon everything? Modern medicine, technology, and your professional standing?" "I would gain more than I lose," she replied, taking his hand. "A family, a purpose, and connection that I never achieved in my own time." Their decision made, preparations accelerated. Mr. Jeffries would attempt the crossing during the eclipse's totality. Using the temporal gateway, Clara would stabilize with her abilities. If successful, he would return with the crystal before the eclipse ended and the portal closed permanently. As evening approached, they gathered on the lighthouse gallery to witness the first edge of the moon touching the sun's perimeter, the beginning of a celestial event that would determine all their fates. "If this fails," Emma told Henry as they watched the sky, "I need you to know that finding you, finding this, has been the most meaningful discovery of my life." His answer was to draw her close, his kiss carrying the weight of centuries crossed and possibilities embraced. In the cottage below, Clara prepared for her role in the impending ritual, her small face set with determination, despite the increasing transparency of her extremities were visible evidence of her tenuous connection to this timeline. The approaching eclipse would either anchor her permanently to this reality or erase her completely, threads of time unraveling from the fabric of existence.
Chapter 13. The Eclipse Ritual.
Moonlight and shadows painted the lighthouse tower in monochrome as they made final preparations. The eclipse had begun, the moon steadily devouring the sun's disk. Celestial bodies moved into perfect alignment for the first time in over a century. Within the lantern room, mirrors had been positioned according to Margaret's instructions, designed to capture and funnel moonlight through specific paths. On the floor, Clara stood within an intricate pattern created with salt, sand, and water collected from different tidal faces. "Are you ready?" Emma asked gently, kneeling beside the child. Clara nodded, though her face betrayed her fear. "Will it hurt?" "I don't know," Emma answered honestly, "but I'll be right here with you through all of it." Henry completed the final preparations, hanging prisms at calculated points around the lens assembly and positioning the lighthouse beam to create specific refraction patterns. In the center, they had left space for the crystal that Dr. Jeffries would hopefully return with. "The eclipse reaches totality in 20 minutes, Henry announced, consulting his chronometer. "According to Margaret's calculations, the temporal gateway will open for less than a minute at midnight." William Jeffries stood ready, dressed in dark clothes suitable for his mission in 2023. "I can navigate temporal pathways better than most, but this crossing will be challenging. The energy surge during an eclipse creates turbulence." "What if you can't return before the gateway closes?" Emma asked. "Then I remain in your time, and you remain in this one." Jeffries smiled faintly. "A fair exchange of temporal agents, I suppose." "Except you know what awaits you in 2023, Henry noted. "Emma has chosen this time with limited knowledge of what her life will become." "I know enough," Emma assured him, squeezing his hand. "I know who I'll share it with." As the eclipse progressed, temporal distortions multiplied throughout the lighthouse. Doorways briefly opened to different years. Emma glimpsed the lighthouse automated in the 1950s, abandoned in the 1970s, and renovated for tourists in the 2010s. Objects from different eras materialized momentarily before vanishing again. Electric lights, modern furniture, and future devices they couldn't identify. Clara began the ritual as planned, channeling the building temporal energy through her consciousness. Blue light emanated from her small form, spiraling upward through the tower. "It's working," Emma whispered. "She's creating a stable temporal corridor." "But at what cost?" Henry worried, watching his daughter's increasing pallor. The moonlight reflected through the arranged mirrors began intersecting in mid-air, forming geometric patterns of light that rotated slowly above Clara's head. As the eclipse approached totality, these patterns accelerated, spinning faster until they blurred into a glowing disk. "Temporal gateway forming," Mr. Jeffries announced. "I can feel the pull toward your time stream, Dr. Morgan." Emma faced a final decision: step through herself to ensure the crystal's retrieval, or trust Mr. Jeffries with their future. For a moment, she wavered. Her modern life, for all its limitations, was known and secure. This past, however promising, contained innumerable uncertainties. "I'll go," she said suddenly. "I know exactly where to find the crystal." "No!" Clara cried, her concentration breaking momentarily. The light patterns wavered dangerously. You're meant to stay. I've seen it. Henry caught Emma's arm. Trust what we've built here. Trust Clara's vision. Looking into his eyes, Emma found certainty. This man, this child, and this lighthouse at the edge of time, they had become her anchor in ways her modern existence never had. The gateway is stabilizing, Mr. Jeffries reported. I need to cross now, before totality peaks. With a respectful nod to Henry and a reassuring smile for Clara, Mr. Jeffries stepped into the swirling light pattern and vanished. For agonizing minutes, they maintained the ritual's requirements. Clara channeled temporal energy, Henry adjusting the mirrors as the moon's position shifted, Emma monitoring the stability of the gateway. Through the lantern room's windows, they could see the eclipse reaching its zenith, darkness falling across the mid-afternoon sky. "Something's wrong," Clara whispered, her form becoming increasingly transparent. "The doorway is stretching too wide. I can't hold it." Emma quickly recognized the danger. Without the crystal's focusing properties, the temporal gateway was expanding beyond Clara's control. If it continued, it might engulf the lighthouse entirely, dragging them all into the void between times. "Henry, move the primary mirror 3 degrees east," she instructed. "We need to narrow the energy beam." As they worked to stabilize the failing ritual, a commotion erupted from below. Heavy footsteps ascended the tower stairs, accompanied by authoritative voices. "Sullivan, open this door at once," Sheriff Simmons commanded. "Dr. Jones has brought specialists from Portland," Abigail Winters called, her voice strained with worry. "They have papers for Clara." "No matter what, don't break the ritual circle," Emma told Clara firmly. "We must maintain the gateway until Mr. Jeffries returns." Henry positioned himself at the door, barring entry. "Whatever happens, remember I love you both," he told Emma, their eyes meeting in a moment of perfect understanding. The door shuddered under repeated blows. Clara's strength was failing, her form now so transparent they could see the floor pattern through her body. The gateway fluctuated wildly, temporal fragments swirling chaotically. "I can't hold it," Clara whimpered. "I'm sorry." Just as the door splintered open, admitting Sheriff Simmons, Dr. Jones, and 2 stern-faced men in medical coats, a blinding flash erupted from the center of the gateway. When their vision cleared, William Jeffries stood there, clothes singed but triumphantly holding aloft a brilliant blue crystal. "The Zeet crystal," he announced, "retrieved from your era's historical society, with considerable difficulty, I might add." The intruders froze in shock at the impossible scene before them. A man materializing from thin air, a child glowing with unearthly light, patterns of energy swirling through the lantern room. "What in God's name?" Dr. Jones breathed. "Place it in the center," Emma directed Mr. Jeffries, ignoring the newcomers. "Quickly, before the eclipse ends." Mr. Jeffries positioned the crystal within the lens assembly exactly as Margaret's diagrams had indicated. Immediately, the chaotic energies stabilized, drawn toward the crystal structure like iron filings to a magnet. Clara gasped as her form solidified, the dangerous transparency receding. Light exploded outward from the crystal, refracting through the lighthouse lens in patterns that illuminated the sky above Blackwater Cove. The beam swept across the darkened town, where citizens stood witnessing the eclipse, now augmented by an impossible aurora of temporal energy dancing across the heavens. Within the lighthouse, time itself seemed to hold its breath. It was suspended in perfect equilibrium as past, present, and potential futures aligned through the crystal's influence. Clara stood at the center, no longer channeling the energy, but harmonizing with it, her expression one of wonder rather than strain. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I can see everything at once. but it doesn't hurt anymore. As the eclipse began to wane, the temporal gateway closed with a soft implosion of light. Mr. Jeffries bowed formally to Henry and Emma. "My mission here is complete," he announced. "The temporal convergence has been stabilized. Clara is anchored properly to this time stream, and the lighthouse will once more function as intended, maintaining the boundaries between times." Sheriff Simmons and his companions stood transfixed, their earlier purpose forgotten in the face of the miraculous display. "You witnessed a scientific phenomenon," Emma told them calmly. "One that has protected Blackwater Cove for generations. The Sullivan family are its guardians. They are not threats to be removed, but protectors to be honored." The spectacular light show created by the stabilized temporal energies continued across the sky, visible for miles along the coast. To the town below, it appeared as a divine sign. It was a blessing upon the lighthouse that had stood sentinel over their community for decades. Dr. Jones was the first of the intruders to recover his composure. "This requires further study," he murmured, scientific curiosity overriding his previous intentions. "Another time, perhaps," Henry replied firmly. "Today, my family needs rest." As the unwelcome visitors departed, Emma knelt beside Clara, checking her condition. The child's color had returned to normal, her form solid, her eyes clear of the feverish glow that had accompanied previous episodes. "How do you feel?" Emma asked. Clara smiled, a normal child's smile, untouched by the weight of temporal awareness that had burdened her. "Hungry," she answered simply, "and happy. The noise in my head is quiet now." Henry joined them, gathering both into his arms. "It's over then?" "Not over," Emma corrected, leaning into his embrace. "Just beginning." Above them, the crystal glowed with steady blue light, anchoring the lighthouse once more as keeper of the temporal tides and their new family as its guardians.
Chapter 14. Anchors Across Time.
Anxious hours followed the ritual's completion. Though Clara appeared stabilized, Emma continued to monitor her closely for any aftereffects. The lighthouse itself seemed to hum with renewed energy, with the crystal integrated into its mechanisms, restoring the balance that had been disrupted for years. "Her vital signs are normal," Emma reported, using the period medical equipment supplemented by her modern knowledge. "More importantly, the temporal disruptions around her have ceased." Henry exhaled with relief. "And the crystal?" "Functioning exactly as Margaret described in her journal. It's creating a stable temporal field that should prevent further slippage between time streams." While Clara slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, Emma gathered her remaining modern possessions, the water-damaged phone, fragments of equipment, and her synthetic clothing. With deliberate ceremony, she fed each item into the lighthouse's coal stove, watching the final connections to her former life turn to ash. Henry found her there, staring into the flames. "You don't need to destroy everything," he said softly. "Yes, I do." She turned to face him. "I've made my choice, Henry. I belong here now, in this time, in this lighthouse, with you and Clara." His embrace was fierce, as though he still feared she might vanish back to her own era. "I never dared hope for this. After Catherine died, I believed that part of life was over for me. And I never expected to find something more meaningful than my research." She smiled against his shoulder. "I was wrong." The peaceful aftermath was shattered by a commotion outside. Dr. Jones had returned with additional authorities from the coastal city, including a judge who had signed commitment papers for Clara. "What we witnessed yesterday requires proper scientific investigation," Dr. Jones insisted, presenting the documents. "The child must be examined by specialists." "My daughter is not a research subject," Henry stated firmly. The phenomenon you witnessed have concluded with the eclipse, as Dr. Morgan predicted. That woman has no medical credentials recognized by any institution in this country, one of the Portland doctors objected. As tensions escalated on the lighthouse steps, the confrontation was interrupted by Captain Pierce's arrival with unexpected news. "Telegraph just arrived from Boston," he announced. "For Dr. Morgan, this is official recognition from the New England Scientific Society regarding her successful demonstration of atmospheric optical phenomena during yesterday's eclipse." Emma accepted the telegram with confusion until she noticed Mr. Jeffries' slight nod from the crowd's edge. He had apparently laid groundwork in her name before departing their time. The document, impressively official with multiple institutional seals, effectively established her scientific credibility and explained the lighthouse phenomena as legitimate research rather than supernatural occurrence. "The Society wishes to consult with Dr. Morgan and Mr. Sullivan about their groundbreaking work," Pierce continued, clearly enjoying the authorities' discomfort. "They specifically requested that the child remain under her family's care for continued observation." The Portland officials exchanged uncertain glances, their authority undermined by this unexpected development. Dr. Jones, however, was not so easily deterred. There are still questions about Dr. Morgan herself, her sudden appearance, her unusual knowledge. William Jeffries stepped forward. "Dr. Morgan's credentials and background have been thoroughly vetted by my organization. Any administrative irregularities are being corrected through proper legal channels." The standoff ended with the authorities reluctantly departing, though Dr. Jones's expression promised this wasn't finished. When the crowd dispersed, Mr. Jeffries approached Emma and Henry privately. "I've taken the liberty of creating a historical background for you," he explained, handing Emma a leather portfolio containing documents of birth certificates, educational records, and letters of reference, all perfectly forged. "As far as official records will show, you're Dr. Emma Morgan, educated in Germany and recently widowed, who has taken residence in Blackwater Cove to continue your scientific research." "You've thought of everything," Emma marveled, examining the meticulous paperwork. "The Kronos Initiative has considerable experience integrating temporal refugees." Mr. Jeffries smiled. "You'd be surprised how many choose to remain in times not their own when they find something worth staying for." "And Clara?" Henry asked. "Will she be safe now?" "The crystal's integration into the lighthouse has stabilized the temporal convergence. Her abilities should normalize, still present but controllable. Teaching her to understand and manage them will be your ongoing responsibility." Mr. Jeffries hesitated. "I must return to my own assignments now. The timeline here appears secured." After his departure, they gathered in the lantern room, watching the crystal's steady blue glow as it powered the lighthouse beam. Clara demonstrated her newly controlled abilities by creating a small, stable time bubble where a flower bloomed and returned to bud in a continuous, controlled cycle. "No more accidents," she promised. "I'll be careful." That night, as Clara slept soundly, Henry and Emma stood on the lighthouse gallery beneath a canopy of stars that had shone unchanged for centuries. "What happens now?" Henry asked, his arm around her waist. "We build a life," Emma replied simply. "I adapt my scientific knowledge to this era. You continue keeping the lighthouse. We raise Clara to understand her gifts." "And us?" His question held vulnerability beneath the surface confidence. In answer, she kissed him, no longer tentative but certain, a promise across time. Whatever challenges awaited them in this century, they would face together. The lighthouse beam swept across the Atlantic, guiding ships safely through the night, and perhaps stabilizing the very fabric of time itself.
Chapter 15. Keepers of Time. 6 months later.
"Careful with that solution," Emma cautioned as Clara measured liquid into a glass beaker. Just 3 drops, remember? The small laboratory they'd established in the lighthouse's lower level hummed with activity. Specimens lined shelves, and notebooks filled with observations occupied a large desk. Scientific apparatuses, both period-appropriate and cleverly disguised adaptations of future principles, filled the workspace. Like this? Clara asked, demonstrating perfect laboratory technique despite being only 9 years old. Excellent! Emma smiled with pride. Now record your observations in your journal. 6 months had transformed their lives. With Mr. Jeffrey's documents establishing her identity, Emma had integrated seamlessly into 1890's Blackwater Cove. The town's initial suspicion had gradually yielded to cautious acceptance, especially after she and Eleanor Prescott established a small school for girls that taught scientific principles disguised as domestic arts. "Papa's coming home today," Clara announced, momentarily abandoning her experiment. Her temporal abilities, now stabilized and controlled, occasionally manifested in knowing things before they occurred. "Is he? He wasn't expected until tomorrow." Captain Pierce's boat got favorable winds. They're docking early. Henry had traveled to Boston at the New England Scientific Society's invitation to present their sanitized research on atmospheric optics, which was actually a cover for the true temporal phenomena they continued to study privately. Emma adjusted her clothing. The period dresses she'd initially found restrictive, now feeling natural after months of wear. Her modern knowledge remained useful, but she'd learned to adapt it within 19th century frameworks, careful not to introduce concepts that might disrupt historical technological development. Clara's condition had stabilized completely. With the crystal integrated into the lighthouse, her temporal sensitivity now manifested as controlled awareness rather than disruptive episodes. Under Emma's guidance, she was developing both her scientific abilities and her unique temporal gifts. "There's the boat," Clara called from the window, rushing toward the door. "I'll meet Papa at the path." Alone briefly, Emma surveyed their home, now truly hers as well. The cottage had expanded with her presence, filled with books, specimens, and the comfortable clutter of a family that valued knowledge alongside closeness. Photographs filled the mantel. There were Henry and Clara, of course, but now including herself, their small family complete. The cottage door burst open as Clara led Henry inside, his face brightening at the sight of Emma. "Welcome home," she greeted, stepping into his embrace. "The society was remarkably receptive," he reported after kissing her thoroughly. "They've approved funding for continued research, all properly disguised as conventional meteorological studies, of course." Their quiet domesticity was interrupted by the arrival of Reverend Ward, whose initial hostility had gradually softened into grudging acceptance after witnessing Clara's transformation into a perfectly normal-appearing child. "Mr. Sullivan." "Dr. Morgan." He nodded stiffly. "I've come to discuss the arrangements for Sunday's service." After the eclipse, many townspeople had interpreted the spectacular light display as divine approval of the lighthouse. To everyone's surprise, Reverend Ward had eventually incorporated this interpretation into his sermons, presenting the Sullivan family as blessed with special understanding of God's natural wonders. That evening, Henry, Emma, and Clara shared a simple meal in the cottage. Conversation flowed easily between scientific discussions and everyday matters, a family balanced between extraordinary knowledge and ordinary happiness. "I've been thinking," Henry said as Clara cleared the dishes, "perhaps it's time to make our arrangement more permanent." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. "Are you proposing, Lighthouse Keeper Sullivan?" "Inelegantly, perhaps." He took her hand across the table, but with complete certainty. "Will you marry me, Dr. Morgan? Become Clara's mother in name as well as in practice, as well as my wife for this lifetime? Yes, the simplest answer to the most important question. Though I believe I've been Clara's mother and your wife in all the ways that matter for some time now. Clara, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, abandoned all pretense and rushed to embrace them both. I knew it. I saw the wedding in my time dream last night. 2 weeks later, they formalized their relationship in a small ceremony at the lighthouse. Afterward, as they watched the lighthouse beams sweep across the darkening ocean, Clara tugged at Emma's sleeve. "I have something to show you," she said, leading them to the lantern room. With careful concentration, Clara created a small temporal bubble, her gift now perfectly controlled. Within it, they witnessed a brief montage of their future together. Clara grew into a confident young woman, Henry and Emma aging gracefully, and the lighthouse continuing its dual purpose of guiding ships and stabilizing time. "Is that certain to happen?" Henry asked, arm around Emma's waist. "It's the most likely timeline now," Clara answered with the peculiar wisdom that occasionally emerged from her childhood innocence. "Because Mother chose to stay." "Mother," Emma repeated, tasting the word she'd never expected to claim. "I like that very much." As they stood watching the lighthouse beam, Emma reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her here, from ambitious scientist in 2023 to lighthouse keeper's wife and temporal guardian in 1891. She had lost technology, modern medicine, and professional recognition, yet gained a family, purpose, and deeper connection than she'd ever known. In her office below, a journal waited. The first volume of what would become an extensive record of their experiences and addressed to future generations of timekeepers. The first entry of this initial volume read, "To whoever finds this account, whether tomorrow or centuries hence, time is not the rigid progression we once believed, but a fluid, living dimension that occasionally allows glimpses across its boundaries. I crossed those boundaries to find my true place, not in the time of my birth, but in the time where my heart belonged. The lighthouse stands sentinel not just over dangerous waters, but over the very fabric of reality. May those who follow in our footsteps understand both the science and the wonder of what we guard here." Dr. Emma Morgan Sullivan, Lighthouse Keeper's Wife and Temporal Guardian. December 21st, 1891.